Welcome to Gracefully Graying. I'm your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Every week on Gracefully Graying, we explore issues that those of us who are aging or who have aging parents face as we are trying to live our life to its fullest. Today on Gracefully Graying, I'm pleased to welcome Irena Politano as we cover an important issue, that regarding guardianships and conservatorships in the legal system through the probate courts. Irena, welcome to Gracefully Graying.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure. So my name is Irena Politano. I'm a CEO founder of a company called Michigan Conservators, and I am a guardian and conservator.
What prompted you to found Michigan Conservators?
So my background is in finance and fundraising, and I sat on the other side of the table from other guardians and conservators, as well as clients that I felt that would have used some help from a professional guardian or conservator. However, I was not in a position to make those suggestions or to make those changes. I also have seen on the news and heard of family and friends that have been financially exploited. And these are issues that really I'm passionate about and that tug at my heart. So one day I just decided there's something I need to do about this. I need to stop this and prevent this from happening as much as I can. So
you just created this company yourself?
I did.
Tell us exactly a little bit about the company, and then we'll go more towards, some of the topics regarding definitions.
Sure. So my company currently is just myself. My husband is an attorney, and he provides legal services for the company. Hopefully someday I can grow it so I can cover and help more clients in the future. Company is 2 years old. I've been doing this for about 2 years, and I'm even more passionate to grow my company even bigger.
Irena, what is a conservator?
So conservator in a legal sense is a person appointed by judge to care for legally financial matters of a person who is unable to do so for themselves.
And next, what about a guardian?
So guardian is also a legal term for a person appointed by judge to care for health, safety, and issues of daily living for a person who is unable to do so by themselves.
Well, that brings me to the next question, Irena. Can one person wear both hats?
One person can fill both hats, yes.
How common is that?
That is actually very common, very common.
Because basically, I think for our viewers, what we're talking about is a conservator. It means you're conserving money. You're watching someone's money, especially if someone's no longer able to make rational decisions or to take care of his or her financial estate.
Sure.
Whereas a guardian is taking care of the person, taking care of the body.
Yes.
When does someone need a guardian or a conservator?
Well, that's a very good question. So if the person is at the point where they're no longer able to legally take care of their own matters, this can be caused by just plain old age. It can be caused by mental deficiency. It can also be caused by physical deficiency or disability.
And who determines whether or not someone meets the criteria?
Court does determine if somebody meets the criteria of having a guardian or conservator. It's a process that a guardian and conservator goes through with their client or with their family member or loved one in order to have guardianship and conservatorships over that person.
So is the guardian appointed first, or first there has to be, I guess, a court determination whether it's necessary?
The court determination makes it necessary. Typically a doctor would diagnose somebody with a certain illness, or sometimes due to an accident, person can be physically unable to no longer carry for themselves. The doctor will then, in fact, deem that person incapacitated to make their own decisions. Just because the doctor deems them incapacitated doesn't mean that somebody automatically gets the legal guardianship or conservatorship over that person. They still have to go through the legal system in order to obtain that.
And I know that can be difficult because I've had cases where we tried to commit someone due to severe alcohol or drug abuse, and
Sure.
it could be for 24 hours, and then, you know, someone becomes sober again.
Correct.
That's the end of it.
That is correct.
So you're dealing more with long-term situations where someone has a severe injury or accident, or someone has, you know, Alzheimer's or dementia, by
That
way
is
of
correct.
examples.
That is correct. Those are most of the cases that I have. It's elderly with dementia and Alzheimer's. I have one case where there's a closed head injury due to an automobile accident. And I have one person that is physically incapacitated due to an injury. Even though in their mind they can communicate and they seem just as sharp, physically they're unable to, you know, write the checks, make phone calls, and that sort of thing. They need assistance.
Irena, how do people find you?
So that is a very good question. I personally stay off the court-appointed list. My clients come strictly through referrals. Those referrals come from the associations that I belong to, such as a Michigan Guardianship Association and a National Guardianship Association. I also build strategic partnerships with local attorneys, financial advisors, bank professionals, people that interact with clients that may need my services on an everyday basis, that build trust with them. My personal philosophy, my personal style is that I would like to know my client first before I become their guardian conservator, and would like for them to know me first and choose me to be their guardian and conservator, and not just get appointed blindly through the court system.
Well, you said you stay off the court list, and I know the
Sure.
court has a list of, I guess, approved guardians or conservators, or perhaps, I don't know how much is political, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of political you know, issues involved in that. I personally, because I'm such a young company, and it's just me right now, I can only handle a caseload that I feel like would be sufficient for myself to provide adequate care for my clients. So I like to keep my client base very small, and with having that personal relationship with clients, I can make sure that I can keep that small, and I can give them the attention that they need. So currently I have 7 clients, and I only want to have up to 20 clients. When you're on a court-appointed list, you oftentimes get appointed many cases, and it's, you know, if you don't want to refuse a lot of cases, then, you know, you might not be able to stay on a court-appointed list. So I like to be selective towards my cases, but I like to keep my caseload small so that I can give that specialized service to my clients that I feel that they deserve and they
So
need.
on a court-appointed list, someone might have 100 or more than 100 clients.
Yes, typical person on a court-appointed list, at least in the southeast Michigan area, through my research, I realized that they have between 100 and sometimes up to 2,000 clients. And I just feel like that would be, for my size of my company, that would, even 100 clients will be unmanageable. It will be very difficult to manage and difficult to know that many people.
But you can't do a good job.
Personally.
It's like
Exactly.
kind of a revolving door type
That
of
is
situation.
correct. And I mean, I just care about people too much to let that happen.
Irena, let's say someone walks in the door and says, I need a guardian or a conservatorship. Well, it's not going to be the person himself or herself. It's going to be a family member who contacts you, correct?
Family member, a loved one, a concerned citizen, a concerned neighbor. I have had recently where, you know, there's that neighbor on the street that lives by themselves, and that, you know, neighbors help each other out. They shop for groceries. Maybe somebody mows the lawn and shovels their snow, but they're noticing that the person's health is declining. They're staying inside more. They might have had a fall. They might have, you know, mail is piling up outside, and they're really being, you know, concerned. In a typical circumstance, they would call the police for a well check. The police will call Adult Protective Services, and the case will be open for that particular person. They would get appointed, possibly a guardian or conservator at some point. Now the neighbors will call me, and they would say, you know, can we have that conversation with this person and see if we can help them even stay in their own home, but to get some assistance and get some help, you know, to get their bills caught up, and, you know, if there's something I can do about that.
So you're contacted.
Yes.
You go visit the person, which could be in a person's home. It
Yes.
could be literally in a hospital
Absolutely.
or rehab center. All of
Correct.
those possibilities.
Any of those things, yes. And if the person is able to talk soundly and disclose the information about, themselves, their history, maybe medical history, family situation, if there is family involved, I gather all that information. And based on that first assessment, I consider what my next steps would be. If there is family involved, I reach out to the family members, and oftentimes they just don't realize what is happening to their loved ones until they get that call.
Irena, take us through the initial interview. Give us an idea of what types of questions you ask or information you're seeking.
Sure. I get to know them from their name, their birthday, where they were born, who their parents are, do they have any siblings, are they married, have they been married, do they have any children, or any close relatives nearby, where they come from, kind of hear their life story and hear, as much as they're able to tell me about their life to kind of paint the picture of who this person is that, I'm trying to help.
How long is a typical interview?
Usually, and sadly, they're very short. People that I interact with usually don't have family members or are estranged from their family members. And there's very little, sometimes that they remember. They're embarrassed by it. They're realizing that, they reach the age where their, friends are long gone. Parents are long gone, their loved ones are long gone, and they're just left by themselves. So sometimes they're very short interviews.
Irena, what are the typical ages of people that you have as clients now?
My current clients are 65 and older. My youngest client is 65. My oldest client is 90 years old. So it's quite a range.
And what are the symptoms that most of them show? Give us an idea.
Sure. So most of the symptoms are early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's. Like I mentioned, I do have a gentleman that does have a closed head injury from an automobile accident.
Is he younger?
But he's 65.
Okay, so he's your youngest.
He's youngest one. He is, pretty physically, pretty capable of doing and taking care of himself on a daily basis. He does get home help and home services as a part of the automobile settlement. He's just very forgetful. He'll forget to eat. He'll forget to come inside if the weather is cold. He'll forget to take his medicine on time. So he needs somebody there, he'll forget to pay his bills if this was his responsibility. So he needs somebody to look after his affairs. And he does have home care assistant that comes to his home during the day that prepares the meals, does some light housekeeping, and most importantly does medicine reminders to make sure that he takes his medicines on time.
So you are retained, you take a client.
Sure.
What happens next? Tell us the steps that you go through.
If we deem that I'm the right person to be appointed as a guardian or conservator, I filed a petition with the probate court in the county that the person is a resident of.
So you handle legal work?
I do handle all the paperwork and all the legal process from the beginning to the end.
So take us through us. You file a petition claiming that there's a need for a guardianship and or conservatorship.
Correct.
Because, and the basic reason, my understanding, is that someone is unable to take care of his or her basic needs.
Correct, and based on my assessment, they would need help. They either have diagnosis, medical diagnosis, there's a physical diagnosis, or I have one case where the person said, I'm noticing I'm failing in doing some of my everyday duties, and I really need help. I'm getting of age where I'm afraid that something may happen to me, and I live by myself, and if there's no one here checking up on me and making sure that I'm okay, I'm afraid that something may happen. Either myself or a petitioner that brought this person to my attention will petition the court, and I will walk with them through the process. We would fill out a petition, and we would get a notice of hearing from the court. The petition will be served to any living heirs or any persons of interest. So if the person does have family, even though they're a distant family, they still have a right to know what is happening to their loved one. We file the petition, we serve everybody that we deemed as an interested party, and we schedule a hearing at our local probate court.
From the date a petition is filed until a hearing, how many days elapse typically?
So in a good case scenario, it's about 4 weeks. It's about 30 to 50 days. And it depends how busy the court is, how busy when the schedule opens up. But it also allows time for a court to send a guardian ad litem to visit the person, to assess the situation themselves, and then report that situation back to the court as well.
Tell us what the role of the guardian ad litem is and what the qualifications are for that.
So guardian ad litem typically is an attorney appointed by court, and court has typically a guardian ad litem court-appointed list, and it's in some courts it's a same person that stays with a client. In some cases, they appoint a new person with each hearing, even though it's the same client having different hearings. Guardian ad litem's duty is to come and assess the living situation in a guardianship case, making sure the person is in a safe environment, that the house is neat and orderly, that the food is adequately stocked in a house, that medicine is organized well and it's current and not expired, that the house, if there are some physical difficulties, that the house is provided, with adequate safety measures to keep the person safe in there. On a conservatorship side, a good guardian ad litem would look at the financials of the person, would look at, see if the person's bank records, investment records are not compromised in any way. And that report then gets reported back to the court.
So the guardian ad litem does an initial, assessment.
Sure.
Reports to the court.
Yes.
Then a determination is made as to whether or not you or someone else should be appointed, to take a more permanent role. Would that be an accurate statement?
That is a very accurate statement. So at the hearing, there would be a client, a petitioner, myself, and any interested party in the case. And the judge will typically hear from everyone present, including guardian ad litem, and would consider guardian ad litem to report any medical records, any incidents or accidents that may have happened. If the Adult Protective Services were involved in any matter, Adult Protective Service agent will be in court as well, and their reporting will be taken into consideration as well.
So Irena, you're already on the case.
Yes.
You've taken the case, so you've actually started working as a conservator guardian. So
Correct.
Long before they're in court, you're going to be monitoring someone's daily lives. You're
Correct.
going to be paying bills where necessary and making sure that the person is getting appropriate medical treatment, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, that is very correct. And if there are services they should be receiving that they don't currently receive, that they're not aware that they're available to them, I make sure that those services are provided to them. Oftentimes, the person wants to stay in their home, and my personal style is to provide the least restrictive environment for the people that are my clients. So if they can afford to stay in their home, we modify their home, that it's safe for them. We provide home care assistance if they need that. Sometimes on a part-time basis, sometimes on a full-time basis. Just depends on, each person is different, depends on what their needs are, depends what they can afford. There's a lot of other community resources that also could be utilized for care of the person, for their social engagement. A lot of senior community centers provide great social interactions for some of these seniors that are living alone. And it's a nice way for them to kind of get out and have some social interaction as well.
Are most of your current clients living in their homes?
Most of my clients actually do live in their homes. I have one client that is in a nursing home. He's at a medical care. He needs in extreme medical care. So he is, unfortunately, at the nursing home. He couldn't afford the same level of Medicare in his home. And actually, we were able to sell his home, recoup the funds that will then afford to pay for his medical care and do it well.
And so you're involved in just about everything.
Absolutely.
How much involvement do other family members have?
In my cases, is as much as they want. I have clients that I'm just their advisor, and their family members are guardians and conservators. I am just a resource for them, and they hire me as a resource for them to kind of oversee what they're doing, make sure they're doing the right job. In case they have questions, they ask me questions. In case they need help with accountings or bill payings, or they're not sure how to handle certain aspects of their financials, I serve as a resource to them. For the clients that I am a primary guardian and conservator, and I have the family members involved, everybody takes on a different role. The ones that want to be involved and want to be in the daily lives of their loved ones and care for them as a caretaker, they just don't want sometimes the decision-making responsibility or the financial-making responsibility, or sometimes they don't have that acumen. They hire me to do that, so they can just be that child to their parent or their loved one without having to carry the burden of the legal aspect of the financial aspect of it.
Well, these are tricky issues.
Yes.
Do you often have situations where family members cannot agree? I mean, I've been in some cases where siblings literally fought over, is the estate being properly managed, number
Sure.
one. Number two, should the house be sold, and should someone be placed into an assisted living facility? So,
Yes.
and I know, I do a lot of family law in my practice, and
Yes.
there's tremendous acrimony, but I'm
Yes.
finding there can be just as much acrimony when people are trying to deal with someone who's perhaps in late-stage dementia or issues where someone may not be around much longer.
That is correct. So I do currently have 2 cases where I am appointed as a third or a neutral party, where the children of a person with dementia are not getting along, and they're fighting over as to who will take care of mom or dad, or how mom and dad will be taken care of, how their financials will be taken care of. And in order to prevent and stop that fighting and the quarreling between the family, they opted for a third neutral party to kind of keep family in bay. And it is a challenge. It's a challenging thing, and it's a thing that I see in courts being the biggest and the most difficult issue is the family dynamics.
Tell us more about that.
So,
do you think there's a lot of guilt? Do you think there's a lot of, or someone says, well, I've always been the favorite child, or I know what's best for mom, or I know what's best for dad? I mean, do you see a lot of that?
There is a lot of that. I do hear a lot of, I was always told I was their favorite son or daughter. Mom always asked me to take care of her, when she aged, and not, make sure that, somebody else doesn't, in the family doesn't take care of her. People's lives change. People grow families and they have their own health issues, and what mom and dad sometimes originally have indicated, in their estate planning and that sort of thing might not be the case later on. Had a special, circumstance where a daughter was taking care of mom and, was helping herself with mom's finances and mishandling mom's finances, and we had to remove her from that daughter and have her live with another daughter instead. And there was a lot of bitterness of the other siblings towards the daughter that was misappropriating mom's funds, and they asked me specifically not to allow mom to see that daughter, or not to allow daughter to see mom, and I just couldn't do that. So
how'd you handle that?
So how I handled that, and it's actually becoming a more common way. I supervise visitation between adult children and their elderly parents to make sure that each person has an adequate time to spend with their parent, regardless of what the previous circumstances might have been, or what they did or didn't do prior to my appointment.
So, Irena, you actually stay with them I mean, in the divorce and family law arena, we often have supervised parenting time.
We do.
Where there has to be someone who's a neutral, literally sitting in on the parenting time, which is what we call visitation in the family law arena.
Yes, so I physically sit in the meetings. Sometimes I will take mom to a restaurant or a coffee shop, and daughter will meet us there, and I will sit at a table with them, while they're carrying on a conversation, and I just make sure that other siblings are not mentioned, or there's no unpleasant information shared. There's no certain questions asked about maybe open cases that we have about certain things that might have transpired prior to my appointment, and that sort of thing. That is just a child-parental relationship at that time.
And what are some of the issues that you deal with? I mean, how do you deal with these people? Because that must be the most challenging part of your job.
It is a challenging part, but on the other hand, it's a rewarding job when I feel like that I can bring peace to the family and I can find a way for family to get along, even if they're not in the same room together. To find ways for mom to have their relationship with each child, or dad to have a relationship with each sibling.
Now, when you're court appointed as the guardian/conservator, and I'm sure in most cases you're wearing both hats.
Sure.
You have a lot of power. Do you find that the family members will listen to you?
It's a mixed bag. I do have some that are very grateful, and they see the work that I'm doing, and they see the extent of work that I'm doing. In some cases, even recovering funds for their parents that they didn't even know they have. So in those cases, they're very grateful, and they're seeing that I'm using those funds very prudently, that the services that are provided to their parents is more than adequate, and their parents are actually thriving, where before they might have not been the case. On the other hand, I do have a handful of family members where they feel like I'm taking away from their inheritance, and that's where the challenge becomes, in relaying the message that my job is not to preserve their inheritance. My job is to use the funds that their parents worked so hard for their benefit.
Take care of mom, not the children. We're down to less than a minute. Give us a couple of takeaways before we sign off. And again, for our viewers, we're going to return shortly with the second part on this very important topic.
Yes. Make a plan. While you can, I advise people my own age to sit down with their family members, with their loved ones, talk about this openly, create a plan that would be sustainable and will help them in the future. It's
so important. I mean, people don't like to talk about these issues. They don't want to plan, but it's important. We're out of time. Irena Politano, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on Gracefully Graying. I want to tell you that we can see Gracefully Graying at Bloomfield Cable when it runs, on the site for Bloomfield Cable at bloomfieldtownship.org, and also on the Henry Gornbein YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.